to be here. You were there watching everything as it unfolded. And some of you were like getting into the scrum, egging everything on and asking inappropriate questions. Oh, some of you, yes. But thank you very much for being here. I was really pleased to have a very good delegation. Mr. Adrian Go, who is one of our social partners from business, has been here as part of the strategic team, but in the end, because of the numbering of the delegation, could not be fully accommodated. I was rather sorry about that. And we tried everything, but they stuck to certain numbers. I was delighted to have the president of COSATU with us, who we were able to muscle in, and also to have the 4 ministers in the delegation. Minister Lamula, of course, International Relations Minister, Minister Tau, Department of Trade, Industry and Competition, and Minister Nchaveni and Minister Steenhuisen. It was a really good, unified, diverse delegation, which was also supported by outstanding South Africans who were golfers and a businessman. Mr. Johan Rupert was there, as well as Eniels and Relative Khosen and President Trump, knowing them and having so that, in my view, was really good, and also to respond to some of your South African questions. Following that engagement, which you all witnessed, we retired to what I think they call the cabinet room. We were able then to have really good in-depth exchanges with President Trump and his other officials. The discussions revolved, of course, around golf, but they also revolved around issues of trade and investment. And we were able to, in discussing all that, one, to confirm that there will continue to be engagement between South Africa and the United States officials, particularly the trade and industry level, to deal with the package of issues that we had tabled that have to do with trade and investment. And if you like, Minister Tau will be able to outline some of those that are now being given serious consideration by the United States. So I was rather pleased that there's a firm agreement and undertaking that we're going to continue engaging. So there's no disengagement. For us, that was one of the key outcomes that we had wanted. Our objective in coming here was to reset by some of the issues that had been raised during the engagement, or what many people thought was also contaminating relations, for instance, the ICJ case and Ukraine, Russia, and all that. And it turned out that, yes, President Trump's concern is about the safety of people in South Africa, much as he zeroed it down to, say, white farmers. We kept saying there is a security problem, and we're not running away from that. There's criminality, and we even sought to deal with it from its genesis, that in the end, when the economy is not growing, when there's poverty, when there's unemployment, one of the social ills that we get as a derivative is criminality that spreads itself around the countries, not only on farms or rural areas, it's even in urban areas. So he expressed his views about that, and I was rather pleased that quite a number of our compatriots were able to deal with that, including Minister Steenhuisen and President of COSATU as well. So in the discussions over lunch, we didn't dwell on that issue, it having been dealt with more thoroughly during the engagement in the Oval Office. However, they did ask, what help do you need? And we said, well, already in South Africa, we utilizing some technology in one of the areas in our country, which we would like to see if we can be utilized. But the main thing we said in terms of assistance and help is investments. And we harped on that we require more investment from the United States, and we require a more positive disposition from the United States, because once the United States government and the president emits a very positive disposition towards South Africa, it unlocks a lot of investment, and investors would then be willing to come and invest their money. We want foreign direct investment. We want to keep the jobs that we have that have been created by US companies, and we want more and more US companies to come and invest. And Minister Tau also explained that one of the US companies has invested in a lithium company in our country, and that shows a positive disposition towards South Africa. We want that to increase. And one of the key confidence building measures or mechanisms is the engagement that is going to continue on investments, on tariffs, and an investment climate creation in South Africa, and our access to the American market. And continued discussions over AGOA are now going to ensue much more determinedly going forward. So for us, during the lunch discussion, that was the big takeaway. A very, very positive indication. Of course, we couldn't discuss details because those details will be ironed out during those engagements. Secretary of Commerce was present, as Minister of Trade and Industry was also present. We also discussed the G20. And we stressed that the G20, having been formed by the United States, of course, together with other countries, it's important that the United States should continue playing a key role in the G20, more particularly because I want to hand over the presidency of the G20 to President Trump in November. And I said, he needs to be there. I don't want to hand over the presidency of the G20 to an empty chair. I want to hand it over to him sitting in that chair in November. And he is going to give serious consideration to it. In fact, I expect him to be coming to South Africa, and he, having realized the important role that the United States continues to play in international or multilateral formations or organizations like the G7 and the G20, and he having said, of course, the G7, would be much more impactful with the participation of the United States, as the G20 would be more impactful in global matters with the participation of the largest economy in the world. So my takeaway from that is that G20 participation by the United States is going to be happening. So we're particularly pleased with that. And in the other discussions that will happen in various channels, which are also led by Minister Lamola, we will also be dealing with their participation in the various committees and various summits that are taking place on an ongoing basis, because there was a pullback. So we want them to re-engage, and those discussions will then go forward. So all in all, I do believe that our visit here has been a great success. We've been able to achieve what we set out to achieve re-engagement with the US, to put the issues of investment, continue engaging through the various other formations. It's good that his Secretary of Commerce was sitting right next to him, and they continued exchanging how our continued engagement will happen. So all in all, I'm rather pleased. I go back tonight having a sense that we have done well. I know that many South Africans were filled with a great deal of concern and fear that we will have a Z moment and all that. That did not ensue. And I know that you yourselves as the media, you wanted to see drama and something really big happening. And I'm sorry that we disappointed you somewhat when it comes to that. So, but thank you very much for having, for a number of you, come all the way from home to the White House. And I'm rather glad that they allowed you to come into the Oval Office. And that in itself was good. And they gave us a number of mementos. And I was given a book. So I gave him a book, a golf book, and he gave me a book as well. So that is good. Lots of reading indeed in the future. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. We'll now take questions in the typical South African orderly format, as we always do, starting with Sherwin. Bryce, please.
Where's Grace? Grace, you promised me a book. I know these people are going to ask lots of questions.
Thank you, Grace.
But I'm not going to take all the questions.
I'll pose them to you and you can
And
communicate as you choose.
and some of my colleagues, including Adrian, who's here, and Losi and the ministers will, but we're not staying here for long, are we?
No, we're not.
I've got a plane to catch.
Yes, sir.
Thank
yes,
you.
sir. We'll
I'll
keep this
just take
brief.
one question then.
Thank you.
Mr. President, thank you very much. I don't know what constitutes drama in your book, but that was very dramatic for me and for everybody else in the room. That was a dramatic Oval Office meeting, so I'm going to push back on that. In addition to that, can you clarify if there was any discussion around the African Growth and Opportunity Act? There's a lot of discussion about South Africa arriving here with a different option in their back pocket, were that framework not to be renewed in September. And of course, it's critical to the trade relationship between South Africa. Did you get clarity? Did you ask about that? And did you discuss some of the geopolitical concerns? There seems to be a narrowing of the divisions that have framed the relationship on Gaza, that have framed the relationship on Ukraine. Was that part of the discussion? Are you going to work collaboratively moving forward in terms of arresting those two pressing issues? Thank you.
Thank you, Sherwin. I'm going to take John.
Mr. President, John Aligo with the New York Times. Just two things. One, you mentioned that the U.S. president can be a great signal for investor confidence in South Africa. Obviously, what we just saw in there was not sort of a signal of investor confidence, what we saw from Trump in the public sphere. So how do you suppose going forward that you all will get to a place where you can see President Trump expressing something that would show investor confidence? And then the second one, when he was playing the video and talking about the white genocide, At one point, he brought up apartheid and saying, "I know that was bad, but no one's looking at this." You are someone who was, fighting against that system. You lived through that system of apartheid. You had to endure it as a Black South African. Obviously, you're a very measured diplomatic person. Just what did you feel in that moment as, a South African, as a Black South African, when you heard someone try to equate a non-existent genocide to what you all experienced during apartheid?
Thank you, John. Sidi?
Thank you, John. Oh, finally, I get picked to ask a question, unlike the Oval. CD, my dear, from Eyewitness News. Mr. President, just two quick questions. What of the region? I think Sharon asked you now about AGOA, and we know what the greater benefit is for AGOA. But if South Africa was coming in, and some of the ministers have said it, with an alternative deal in mind about South African interest, one has to worry about the rest of the region and the impact thereof. You can't prosper alone in Africa. We are seeing that. So conversations around the region and the rest of the continent, and then the Gulfers' presence in the Oval. If maybe I can just get a bit of a better understanding. From what I'm hearing and understand, they were not at the behest of South Africa's government. You spoke now about how Mr. Gore was left outside, in part because of the issue around the numbers. Can we understand their presence there and even the messaging? A lot of South Africans reacting to the messaging saying, could there not have been a better briefing about what needs to be said? Thank you.
Mr. President, we'll just take those three for now. Thank you.
Yes, the issue of AGOA did come up, and it's going to be further discussed, as I said, in the engagements that we're going to have. The Secretary of Commerce and our Minister of Trade and Industry and Competition are going to be able to take those discussions forward, including some of our proposals, which proposals, by the way, do incorporate the issue of AGOA, because we would like to see ourselves continuing in AGOA. And continuing in AGOA really is about prospering our continent. They even said that there are 32 countries from Africa that participate in AGOA from the mouth of the Secretary of Commerce. And that is so. So it is top of mind for them as well. So we want to continue with those discussions. And it sort of dovetails with the question that CD asked about if we were to do a separate deal with the United States, would that not amount to South Africa prospering alone? No, we always want the entire continent to prosper. And we always take into account that what we do should also include advancing the interests of our sister countries on the continent. And when we do settle down to talk about, for instance, tariffs, we are part of this Southern African Customs Union. So we will be talking about tariffs in that broader context, which means that we will not be looking at ourselves alone. We'll be looking at the interests of our sister countries in the sub-region, if you like, which is SACU, but we will also be looking after the interests and advancing arguments to prosper the interests of our sister countries on the continent. We are by far the largest economy, and depends on at what time it's measured between ourselves, Nigeria and Egypt, but we are one of the three big economies, and our general orientation has always been to prosper as we prosper together with other countries. So even as we do get involved in these negotiations, we will always have an AU perspective, a SADC perspective, and a general sub-Saharan perspective as well. Sherwin asked, did we discuss geopolitical collaboration on geopolitical matters? Yes, we found that our interests do coincide in as far as peace building and peacemaking is concerned. And we did compliment President Trump in being very forward in advocating for peace in our region between Rwanda and the DRC, and also Russia and Ukraine. And we outlined precisely what our involvement has been over the years. Speaks to both. We were condemned at an early stage, but I think much later people realize that the role that we play is a constructive role, because we have been able to deal with intricate issues that involve the two countries, about the children and the prisoners of war. And he appreciated that, and he recognized the role that we play. And even as President Zelensky came to South Africa, he says he wanted to know where Zelensky was, and he had that, oh, he's in South Africa. And before then, I had called, had a telephone with President Ramaphosa. So the role that we play in peace-building missions and processes around the world is recognized and is known, and it was also confirmed today. John from the New York Times says about the positive disposition of President Trump that it was not so clear. It may not have appeared that way, but the issue that he kept raising, or he raised prominently, is the issue of genocide. And when he was asked by one of you, and thank God one of you asked, whether he was convinced that there was genocide, he says, no, he's not convinced. Much as he flighted the video and all those press clippings. And in the end, I mean, I do believe that there is doubt and disbelief in his head about all this. And I think today's meeting, and particularly when he heard from the other members of the delegation, from Minister Steenhuisen to even Johan Rupert and President of COSATU, Losi, and all that, they spoke from their own experiences and what they know, and that in many ways will have deposited in his head the process. And the fact that he and I have agreed that we're going to meet again, and we will meet at the G20. By meeting again, I'm not saying immediate, but we have said we will meet again. And of course, one of the moments that we will is going to be at the G20. So that is a process, may I add, is really sort of registered in his head. The issue of whether what he terms as genocide can be equated to the struggle. And of course it cannot, because there's just no genocide in South Africa. And of course, it is an issue of how one looks at it. As they say sometimes, the shape of the mountain depends on which point or which direction you are looking at it. And in this case, we cannot equate what is alleged to be genocide to what we went through in the struggle, because people were killed because of the oppression that was taking place in our country. So you cannot equate that. The presence, as CD asks, of golfers in the meeting. As I think I said, right at the beginning of my input, I said, when I spoke to him, we agreed that we should meet, and he said, bring along with you Gary Player, Annie Els, and Retief Goosen, because he loves them. He's a golfer, he's an avid golfer, and he speaks about golf quite a lot, and he respects the South African icons. And he even asked, what is it about South Africa that produces such great golfers? And I said, it's the water that we drink, and I guess much more. Minister Steenhuisen said, you know, the environment, the atmosphere, and the food. So he wanted to see them again, and to see them in a different setting, in suits and all that. Could there have been a better briefing? We didn't have the opportunity. Some of them just arrived today or just late last night. But it is what it is. And they spoke about their own experience. And it's an experience that we're not hiding. It is there. But what we did do is to present and represent our country, and we represented our country very well. Those golfers are patriotic South Africans. They sort of play on the global stage, but they still regard themselves as South Africans, so they are patriotic. And when they speak, as they speak about their own experience, sometimes you cannot just say you will tell things that just people want to hear. Sometimes you speak about your own experience, and that's what they did. And the way it lands is the way it lands. But in the end, I do not believe that it dilutes or detracts from the import of our message today. We were able to present South Africa, even within the challenges and controversies that have been spread around our country, but we were able in a very unified way to present the South Africa that we have with all its challenges, with all its problems. That's what we did.
Thank you, President. We're going to take a question from Annika, and then come to Stembi.
Thank you, President. Annika last from ENCA. Mr. President, I'm not
Annika,
sure
I
if you-
saw you outside. You asked me questions. You want to ask
Do
again?
you know that it's never enough? Mr. President, I just wanted to say, I don't know if you drink alcohol, but if you do, you deserve a stiff whiskey.
Give that man a bells.
Give that man a bells. Mr. President, is Starlink part of the workaround package that's going to be offered by South Africa? And did the issue of the ICJ case against Israel come up during the briefing or during the lunch? Thank you very much.
Thank you. Stembi over here. Can we pass the mic to Stembi?
Sawubona Mongameli, Sithembile Cele from Bloomberg News. Maybe linked to Annika's question. One of the delegation mentioned the presence of Elon Musk's technology in police stations across South Africa. Did he have a mandate from yourself to make that request? Do you support it? And did it come up behind closed doors? Anything related to Elon Musk, whether it's Tesla? You've previously said that you're keen on his investment in the country in any shape or form. And then in terms of the proposals that were on the table, you kept mentioning critical minerals. What does that deal look like? What shape or form does it take? And lastly, where is your special envoy, Mr. Mcebisi Jonas? Is he not here because there was an issue with the US administration, or are there other factors? Thank you.
Thank you. And last question to Pearl, just behind you. No, I'll come to you. I'll come to you.
Welcome to Washington, Mr. President. I'm Pearl Matibe. I live in Washington, have been here for a quarter of a century, and I'm here for Daily Maverick. So on a more positive note, if I may, food is always, will add color. So if you could share a little bit, Mr. President, what did you enjoy on the menu? And then also to achieve the common ground that both yourself and President Trump would like to achieve, and the economic prosperity of both peoples, that cannot be achieved without security. Right? And so I know that you did mention to President Trump that you don't have a plane to offer him. And I know South Africa has not had a C-130, although the United States did provide a C-130 to a neighboring SADC country. Secretary Hegseth was in the room, and I'd like to find out the Pentagon issues in terms of assisting, or I know military drills have been a point of tensions in the past regarding China and Russia, as China's been the United States' key adversary. So could you share anything? Was there anything in terms of security, and a little bit about what did you eat for lunch? And was there any Diet Coke or any McDonald's or anything of that nature?
Thank you, Pearl. President, I want to take the last question from Zeander. Zeander, you'll have the last question. Thank you.
Thank you very much. My name is Zanda Ngobo from Newsroom Africa. Just linked to my colleagues' questions,
Did you have a moment to speak to Elon Musk? He didn't quite use that opportunity in the Oval Office, in particular when it comes to Starlink. We're told that Communications Minister Solly Malatsi is due to issue Arctic Gazette for an equity equivalent program. Are you aware of this? Is this something that came directly from you? And on the issue of the so-called persecuted white Afrikaners, Secretary of State Marco Rubio has been doing a media tour in the last couple of days while you were here in Washington, and he was basically saying he's wanting to extend the scope of this refugee program. Is that something that came up? I know you said you didn't get into the details, but that's still something that would have surely formed part of the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. That's the last round of questions in the interest of time. Thank you.
Oh, you're not going to allow my ministers to talk.
Oh,
Aninka.
yes, we'll allow the ministers after you.
Yeah, because they can just round off a few things. Aninka, the Starlink issue, was it part of our discussions? No. What we were able, and this is part of the offer or the package that we're talking about, is creating an environment for investments to take place. What do we want? We want US companies to come and invest in South Africa. That is a real deal for us. We want foreign direct investment. And to do that, we've got to create a conducive environment for FDI, for foreign direct investment. And where, for instance, in the past, we've been able to do so and attract US companies and utilize equity equivalents, and US companies have embraced that. That shows that they are willing to go along with our regulatory framework, which we have crafted to attract investors to South Africa. And many other countries utilize a variety of ways to do that. I know, for instance, I was reading that when Tesla wanted to build a gigafactory, car manufacturing factory in China, they were required to have Chinese partners. And they had a negotiation with the Chinese government, and in the end, they dispensed with that regulatory compliance and allowed Tesla to invest directly as a sole company in building a giga car manufacturing facility in China. So what did the Chinese do? They crafted their own regulatory framework, and they were able to come up with a creative way of enabling an investment to take place. Because one, they wanted to bring in an investor, two, create jobs in China and all that. So similarly with us, there's nothing wrong with South Africa to have in the past crafted an equity equivalent provision that has allowed many companies, Amazon, Microsoft, Google, you name them, they've utilized that same type of dispensation. And in doing so, we want to see how best we can attract further investors in South Africa and be able to get a regulatory framework that can allow them to come and invest. And where, for instance, our regulations may be a bit inconsistent with our great intention, we look at them. And somebody asked a question about Minister of Communications. Yeah, that's you, yes. He's going to be able, and in analyzing the regulations of the Communications Act, to see how best we will be able to make them consistent with what we have done in other sectors. And that falls within the realm of creating that conducive environment for us to attract investors to come into South Africa without violating our own rules and regulations, our laws, but It's part of the regulatory process to make sure that we are an investable country where companies from outside South Africa can come and invest. Annika asked whether the ICJ issue came up during the lunch talk. No, it didn't come up. And we got an impression that President Trump's approach to the ICJ is that, let the process unfold, but at the same time to focus on peace building in the Middle East, precisely what we complimented him on. We said, we compliment you for the efforts that you're making to build peace, because we as South Africa also want to be part of that process. And we want to be part of that process even between Israel and Palestine, to be able to participate in a peace-building process, so that in the end there should be peace between Israel and its neighboring countries, particularly Palestine. So the ICJ issue did not arise during the lunch. Stembile asks about you wanted to ask about Tesla and the EVs. Elon Musk was part of the lunch, and we didn't really, focus on the discussions in relation to Tesla. The only issue he raised is that he'd like his Tesla cars to be in South Africa. He wants to import them, and of course, there are tariffs, and the tariff discussion becomes part of what we are going to discuss between the DTIC as well as the Commerce Department. So all that is going to be part of a big discussion that will take place. The issue of critical minerals is also going to be discussed. We did make it clear to the United States that we have up to 9 critical minerals that they need in this country. And some of them we are now already exporting to them. So they are going to be part of the discussions we want to have. But we want to cooperate with them. But what did arise was also an interesting point, which will be taken forward, of how we mine and process minerals in South Africa, and then they can then take the processing further when they come to the United States. So how you work that equation is some of what will be discussed. But the important thing here is that there is greater acceptance, I would say globally, in having processing of minerals closer to source. That is being accepted more and more. We call it beneficiation. And we started pushing this idea some 3, 4, 5 years ago. And it's gaining traction. Once when I was in Europe at the G7, just spoken about, and the then German Chancellor accepted it. He said, yes, we must stop exporting rock, stone, and dust out of Africa. We must process that. And this did arise during our discussions as well. So that is pleasing, but we must know that this is a process that is going to take time. You asked about Mcebisi. Mcebisi is in London. He's not in Washington. So once our delegation was all worked up, we knew that we're working with the delegation that's here, and Mcebisi Jonas is in London, and I think he would have gone home by now. And I was talking to him. Pearl Matibe, when are you coming home? You must come home. We need you back home.
I'm here to help explain greater understanding on
Okay. No, that's good. The food, interested in the food. The food was delicious. We had a 3-course meal, as I said. The main course was chicken breast, grilled and with some asparagus and some other spinach and so on. It was very nice. And we had a starter. I've forgotten what the starter was. So, and what do you call this? The dessert. I usually don't eat dessert, so I looked at it and it looked good. Some did participate. And you also asked about that they delivered C-130s to other countries. We still have a C-130. We have, I think, 2 or 3 C-130s. One is serviceable and the others are being repaired. They're magnificent planes and they've served us very well for the longest of time. So we do have a carrier, which is a C-130. Did we have any discussions regarding the Pentagon? No. Although the Secretary of Defense was there, the discussions never veered towards issues of security. In that sense, it was more security really up our game. And it's good sometimes to share thoughts and views with various other leaders. We've done the same thing with the Chinese, with the Europeans, and they would like to see us doing much more. Zianda asked about Starlink. I answered Rubio, Secretary Rubio. I saw him for a while answering questions in, I don't know whether the Senate or whatever, and he was talking about extending the scope. And in the end, I mean, today's engagement will hopefully, when he gets the report, will be able to hear exactly what our perspective is. So I'm not that overly concerned, but I'm hoping that his engagement with Minister Lamola, following what we experienced or went through today, will be much more constructive. And we want to have a much more constructive conversation also with Secretary Rubio, as we, I think, have had with the other secretaries today. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. President.
Can I go home now?
Yes, please, Mr. President. What I'd like to do, as the President takes leave of us, I'd like to invite Minister Tau to come forward and give a little bit of color on the trade aspects of the discussions. Over to you, Minister.
Thank you very much, Vincent and Mr. President. Colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, I'm not sure about the color. I'm not sure I'm renowned for any color at all, to admit. But I should say that after the golf discussions, I kind of got a sense the president might allow me a bit more time on the golf course. So that when we come back to the US, we're on par, pun intended. We have submitted a proposal to the United States with regards to a framework agreement, focusing in particular on issues related to trade and investment. Minister Steenhuisen and I, together with our teams, met with the US trade representative on Monday. That office gave us feedback with regards to what they think in relation to the proposal are gaps and the areas that they would want us to pursue. And I'll get back to some of the issues that we had raised. And subsequent to that, consulting with our colleagues back in the country, with other departments, SARS and so on, we're able to resubmit yesterday in the evening a revised document for consideration based on the discussions that we had with Ambassador Greer. In terms of the proposal itself, it is about, in particular on trade and investments, areas in which we think there's opportunity to increase trade between ourselves. We indicated, given our impending shortage on gas or the gas cliff, appetite to procure LNG from the US, which was both in our discussions with the ambassador, but also in our discussions at the White House, positively received. And it's one of the areas that we'll be following up on. We also spoke about, in our trade and investment proposal, and I'm not going through the detail, but just components. So we dealt with trade and investment issues. We also dealt with issues in relation to AGOA, and the feedback we received in our engagements on Monday with regards to AGOA was that this is a matter that currently is in Congress. So it would be important for us to follow up in Congress with regards to the reauthorization of AGOA. I should say that having met with the trade ministers in Africa at the recent Africa Continental Free Trade Area Council of Ministers, we've agreed to develop a collective approach with regards to AGOA, and the US has also indicated that they would be convening a US-Africa forum at which we intend to present in detail our proposition on AGOA. But as South Africa, we have it in our document that the reauthorization of AGOA is important. The other chapter that we had, or section that we had rather, related to the Southern Africa Customs Union, SACU, because of course we are in a customs union together with our sister countries. And the context of discussing SACU is because we negotiate tariffs as a customs union. And this is one of the areas that the US required a bit more elaboration. So we agreed that we'd have the issues on tariffs and non-tariff barriers added, which are the issues that we added yesterday. We also added a section on digital trade. And these are areas where the proposal is, these matters are firmly on the agenda. Our respective teams will almost immediately start negotiations. And then we had a section that dealt with the G20. And in our session, extended appreciation to the USTR, the office that deals with trade in the US. We expected appreciation of their participation in the Trade and Investment Working Group. This is the second Trade and Investment Working Group that took place in the Western Cape some 2 weeks ago, at which they were present, and we indicated the importance of us placing trade as crucial in the discussions related to the G20. And the President has indicated that, in fact, we continue to extend an invitation to our counterparts for our respective ministerial meetings, and of course to the Heads of State Summit. With regards to tariffs, which is a matter that I said has now been put firmly on the table, it is important that we restate that in fact 77% of products that the US accesses in the South Africa or engages with the South African market is actually tariff-free into the South African market. So that's an important statement, because in fact when we talk tariffs, we are only relating to them in relation to the products that are not listed in the 77%. And we think that it is important to acknowledge the 77%. We also indicated the reality that, in fact, with regards to the main products that we sell into the US, these would include some of our minerals, which minerals even under the reciprocal tariffs have been excluded, because of course they are in need in the US, and in reality we think it's an important issue in our considerations. When it comes to investments, I think I've made reference to that. I just want to make a quick comment with regards to equity equivalence. Firstly, to make the point that almost 10 US companies invested in South Africa are participating in the equity equivalence program. And equity equivalence is a regime that was created for multinationals to be able to invest in a destination where they say, but we can't sell off portions of our company into your local company or environment. Therefore, we create a regime of equity equivalence, and we have some very exciting equity equivalent programs. So we have Ford participating in the automotive industry fund, which fund is a consolidated fund where the original equipment manufacturers in the automotive sector are participating in a manner that enables supply and enterprise development. So they are building the capability and capacity of their own suppliers in our region, which increases their ability to actually produce in the country. So it's actually a positive indication in terms of equity equivalence. Citibank recently announced, which is one of the more recent ones, a partnership on the investment in a special economic zone, which is the VAL Special Economic Zone, as part of an investor initiative that they are participating in. So we're having these schemes where investors find great opportunity to enhance their own investments in the country through equity equivalent programs. And of course, we design this in line with the respective sectors or companies. I should say we are continuing to pursue Tesla with regards to investing in South Africa as part of the original equipment manufacturers, and we intend to pursue that discussion with them. I remember, Mr. President, when we met with Elon Musk in New York last year, you raised it specifically. And at the time, the response was, but like any other investor, we're going to continue to pursue investments into the South African economy and to pursue partnerships. The last comment is with regards to critical minerals. Of the US's list of critical minerals, we supply 12 of those critical minerals into the US market. 9 of those 12, we are the main provider of those critical minerals into the US market. So they are an important partner with regards to critical minerals. President was indicating that, in fact, yesterday, a transaction was concluded at the Johannesburg Stock Exchange or Securities Exchange with regards to an American company, ASP Isotopes, buying into a South African company for the production and beneficiation of helium in the South African context, which is amongst the critical minerals that are required in the US context. So it is an indication of appetite to invest in South Africa. But we've also said, can we jointly look at enhancing exploration and investment in minerals and mineral beneficiation, which message has been positively received. The detail of will to follow up on these discussions, including on the framework agreement that we've put on the table. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Minister. I think in the interest of time, President, I'm going to allow you to take leave of us and then say to colleagues, the ministers are here. You are more than welcome to continue the engagement. But thank you so much to the members of the media, and thank you, Mr. President.